What happens when the galaxy's most feared empire mistakes patience for weakness? They're about to learn why humans spent 100 years saying nothing and preparing everything. The throne world of Zar'keth gleamed like a jewel in the void, its 3 moons casting silver light across crystalline spires that pierced the atmosphere. Emperor Zar'keth stood before the massive viewport of his war chamber, his 6 arms folded behind his segmented back, watching as the latest fleet returned from what the humans called the Outer Rim. Another successful campaign, another species brought to heel, another sector added to the ever-expanding glory of the Zar'keth Dominion. Behind him, High Admiral Vexither approached with the careful gait of someone who had learned that bearing bad news to the Emperor was a privilege reserved for those who wished to continue breathing. The Admiral's bioluminescent patterns flickered nervously across his carapace, a telltale sign that Zar'keth had learned to read over his 3 centuries of rule. "Speak," the Emperor commanded without turning. "My Emperor, the human delegation has sent another message. They request. Zar'keth's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The humans request. How fascinating. And what, pray tell, do the insects from that backwater system want now? Vexither's hesitation was palpable. They request that we cease military operations in the Sagittarius Arm. They claim that 17 inhabited systems we have integrated were under human protection agreements. Now the Emperor turned, his compound eyes fixing on the Admiral with an intensity that had made warlords weep. Protection agreements? The humans? His laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound like shattering crystal. "Admiral, how many warships do the humans possess?" "Intelligence estimates put their fleet at approximately 400 vessels, my Emperor." 400. Zar'keth moved toward the holographic display dominating the center of the room. With a gesture, he activated it, and the galaxy spiraled to life before them in brilliant detail. Red markers indicated Dominion territory. It covered nearly a third of the mapped galaxy. A tiny blue dot marked Earth's location, surrounded by perhaps 24 systems. "Admiral, how many vessels does the Dominion command?" 73,000 capital ships, my Emperor. Another 300,000 support craft. And yet these humans, with their 400 ships, send us requests. The Emperor's amusement had faded, replaced by something colder. "How long have they been sending these messages?" 217 years, my Emperor." Zar'keth paused. That was unusual. Most species either bent the knee or died fighting within a decade of encountering the Dominion. The humans had done neither. They had simply talked endlessly. They had sent diplomats and emissaries in delegations. They had filed complaints through the Galactic Council, a toothless organization that existed only because the Dominion found it amusing to let the lesser species pretend they had some say in galactic affairs. And in those 200 years, what military action have they taken against us? None, my Emperor. Not a single shot fired. They evacuate their protected species before our arrival, file their protests, and wait. Curious. The Emperor expanded the display, focusing on human space. It was larger than he remembered, not dramatically so, but they had been expanding, slowly and methodically, through colonization rather than conquest. And their response to our denials of their requests. They express disappointment, my Emperor. They warn of consequences. They ask us to reconsider every single time. Vexither's patterns had stabilized now, taking on the confident glow of someone presenting data rather than opinions. Our xenopsychology teams have concluded that humans are a fundamentally passive species. They lack the biological imperatives for conquest. They are builders, farmers, tinkerers. They talk because it is all they know how to do. Zar'keth nodded slowly. It made sense. Every species in the galaxy could be understood through its biology, and humanity's biology was remarkably unimpressive. They were soft-skinned, slow, possessed minimal natural weapons, and required one of the most narrow environmental ranges of any spacefaring species. They had achieved space travel not through physical prowess or psychic might, but through clever tool use and stubborn persistence. What do they want this time? They request a formal meeting, my Emperor. They wish to negotiate a treaty defining clear boundaries between our territories, a treaty. The Emperor's mandibles clicked again. How remarkably naive. Very well. Tell the humans we will meet with them. Send them coordinates for the Drexenal system. We will give them the courtesy of hearing their requests in person before we ignore them. At once. My Emperor. Vexither turned to leave, then hesitated. My Emperor, if I may ask why I grant them this audience? We have never negotiated with species this week before. Zar'keth gazed out at the stars once more. Because, Admiral, it amuses me. Because in all my centuries of rule, I have never encountered a species so persistent in their delusion that words matter more than weapons. I wish to see these humans face to face, to understand what drives them to continue this futile exercise year after year, decade after decade, century after century. What the Emperor did not say, what he barely acknowledged even to himself, was that something about the humans unsettled him. No species survived to 100 years of contact with the Dominion without either submitting or being destroyed. Yet the humans had done exactly that, not through military might, not through cunning alliances, but through simple, inexplicable patience. 3 weeks later, the Imperial flagship Worldbreaker arrived at the Drexenal system, accompanied by a battle fleet that could reduce planets to asteroids. It was a show of force, a reminder of the power differential. Standard procedure for what the Dominion called negotiations. The human vessel that met them there was almost insulting in its modesty. It was small, barely larger than a Dominion corvette, and appeared to be completely unarmed. It bore no battle scars, no intimidating weaponry, nothing that spoke of martial prowess. It was painted in soft blues and whites, with the words UNSS Diplomatic Envoy Hope written across its hull in multiple languages. They named their ship Hope, Vexither said, his tone caught between disbelief and pity. My Emperor, I believe this species may be genuinely incapable of understanding their position. The meeting took place aboard the Worldbreaker, in a chamber designed to dwarf visitors and remind them of the Dominion's grandeur. Zar'keth sat on his throne, flanked by honor guards whose combat armor bristled with weapons. The human delegation was led into the room by a squad of soldiers, their feet echoing on the polished stone floor. There were 3 of them. The leader was a woman. Humans, bizarrely, showed no sexual dimorphism in authority roles, with gray hair and dark skin, wearing a simple blue suit that bore no military decorations. She walked with the assistance of a cane, her movements slow and deliberate. The other 2 were younger, a man and another woman, carrying nothing but data pads. I am Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, the old woman said, her voice steady despite standing before the absolute ruler of 1/3 of the galaxy. On behalf of the United Nations of Earth and her associated colonies, I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Emperor Zar'keth, the translator, rendered her words into the Dominion's primary language perfectly, but Zar'keth noted with surprise that she had attempted to pronounce his name in his native tongue poorly, but the effort itself was unusual. Ambassador, he replied, making no attempt to ease the intimidation factor of his presence. You have requested this meeting for 200 years. I have granted it. Speak. Elena stepped forward, seemingly unbothered by the weapons tracking her movement. Emperor, the Dominion has incorporated 17 inhabited systems that were under human protection. These species trusted us to safeguard their sovereignty. We failed them. We would like to negotiate a formal treaty that prevents such incidents in the future. Protection, Zar'keth said, his voice dripping with contempt. You speak of protection while possessing no ability to enforce it. Those species now serve the Dominion, as is their proper place. They are better for it. They have order, purpose, and the glory of contributing to something greater than their petty individual existence. They had freedom, Elena said quietly. They had the right to determine their own future, rights? The Emperor leaned forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Rights are a fiction, Ambassador. There is only power. The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the fundamental law of the universe, written into the very fabric of existence. Your protection agreements are meaningless sounds, air vibrating in the void, signifying nothing. Elena was quiet for a moment, and something in her expression shifted. It wasn't fear, it was something else. Something that looked almost like sadness. I see, she said. Then you will not agree to recognize boundaries? You will continue to expand into any territory you choose, regardless of existing agreements or the wishes of the inhabitants. Correct, and there is nothing we could offer, no arrangement we could propose. that would lead you to reconsider this position? Nothing. Zar'keth spread his 6 arms wide. Look around you, Ambassador. This vessel alone could reduce your entire fleet to debris. My empire spans 10,000 worlds. Your species controls fewer than 30. What could you possibly offer that would interest him? The 2 planets vanished. The asteroid belt ceased to exist. The star became a perfect sphere of absolute nothing, expanding at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Shields. Full power to shields. Vexither was screaming. Elena nodded slowly, and her 2 companions exchanged glances. The younger woman tapped something on her data pad. Very well, Elena said. Then I will share something with you, Emperor. A piece of history from my world. There was once a nation on Earth called the United States of America. In the 20th century, they were engaged in a conflict with another nation called Japan. The Japanese leadership believed, as you do, that power alone mattered, that the willingness to use force was the ultimate arbiter of disputes. A sensible belief. Zar'keth said, the Americans tried diplomacy first. For years, they negotiated, imposed sanctions, sent warnings. The Japanese leadership saw this as weakness. They attacked. And do you know what the Americans did, Emperor? Presumably they fought. All species fight when pushed. They did fight, Elena agreed. But before they fought, they tried one last time to end the war through negotiation. They issued a final warning. And when that warning was ignored, they unleashed a weapon that had never been used in warfare before. A weapon they had been developing in secret while they negotiated. A weapon so terrible that its use just twice, convinced the Japanese leadership that continuing the war would mean their complete annihilation. You speak of nuclear weapons, Zar'keth said dismissively. Crude atomic fission. Many species develop such things. The Dominion long ago moved beyond such primitive technology. You're absolutely right, Elena said. And now there was something in her voice that made the hair on Vexither's carapace stand on end. Which is why I'm not talking about the weapons themselves, Emperor. I'm talking about what they represented. The Americans spent years being diplomatic, being patient, being willing to negotiate, all while secretly developing the capability to end their enemy completely. They hoped they would never have to use it. They genuinely preferred peace, but they understood something fundamental about dealing with those who respect only power. She paused, and her dark eyes locked onto Zar'keth's compound ones. Sometimes, the most dangerous opponent is the one who spent all that time talking. Preparing, the Emperor laughed, a sound like an avalanche. Are you threatening me, Ambassador? You, with your 400 ships, against my 3,000? Please, tell me, what terrible weapon have you been preparing these 200 years? What secret power do you imagine you possess? Elena's expression didn't change. Emperor Zar'keth, for 217 years, humanity has sent delegations to your empire. We have filed complaints, proposed treaties, requested meetings. We have done everything in our power to resolve this situation peacefully. We have evacuated 63 species from 17 systems ahead of your conquest, saving billions of lives. We have maintained perfect restraint, never firing a shot at your forces, never engaging in sabotage, never responding to provocation. Yes, the Emperor said. You have shown yourselves to be cowards. We have shown ourselves to be patient, Elena corrected. And now our patience is exhausted. Emperor, I am hereby serving formal notice, as recorded by the Galactic Council and witnessed by the assembled AI of Earth's diplomatic corps. If the Dominion does not withdraw from all systems currently under human protection agreements and establish formal borders with human space within 30 standard days, humanity will consider itself in a state of war with the Zar'keth Dominion. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Zar'keth began laughing again, and this time he was joined by his guards, by Vexither, by every Dominion citizen in the chamber. War. The Emperor managed between bouts of laughter. Oh, Ambassador, you have made this worthwhile. War. You would declare war on us. Please, do illuminate me. How do you imagine this war proceeding? Will you throw rocks at my fleets? Will you pilot your 400 tiny ships in brave, futile attacks against my battle stations? Elena reached into her jacket and withdrew a data chip. She held it up. This contains the coordinates for a demonstration, Emperor. It will take place in 2 hours at an uninhabited system on the border between our territories. I strongly encourage you to attend. Bring whatever observation equipment you wish. Bring your war fleets if you feel they would be safer than watching from a distance. Bring your admirals and your tactical analysts. She placed the chip on the table between them. See what humanity has been preparing while we talked. And then, Emperor Zar'keth, you will have 27 days to make your decision. With that, Ambassador Rodriguez turned and walked out of the chamber, her cane tapping against the stone, her two companions following. Not one of them looked back. As the door sealed behind them, Vexithar approached the throne. My emperor, surely this is a bluff. What could they possibly demonstrate that would attend the demonstration, Admiral? Zar'keth said, his amusement fading. Take the third battle fleet. Set up observation posts at maximum safe distance. Deploy every sensor we have. You believe they have something. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. I believe, Admiral, that a species does not maintain perfect diplomatic patience for over 2 centuries without a reason. I believe that a species does not issue ultimatums unless they are prepared to back them up. And I believe, he paused, staring at the data chip, that we may have made an error in judgment. My Emperor, we assumed their patience was weakness. But what if, Admiral, it was simply the time they needed? 72 hours later, the third battle fleet arrived at the coordinates specified by the humans. It was an unremarkable system, a small red dwarf star with 2 rocky planets and an asteroid belt. No habitable worlds, no resources worth exploiting, nothing of strategic value. The Dominion had cataloged it and dismissed it years ago. The fleet deployed in a defensive formation, their sensors active and recording everything. Zar'keth watched from the bridge of the Worldbreaker, surrounded by his best tactical officers. Whatever the humans had planned, they would witness it, analyze it, and prepare counters. The Dominion had not conquered 1/3 of the galaxy by being unprepared. Any sign of human vessels? The Emperor asked. Negative, my Emperor, the sensor officer reported. The system appears completely empty. Wait, I'm detecting a spatial anomaly. Approximately 10 million kilometers from the star. Bearing the officer never finished the sentence. Space simply opened. There was no other way to describe it. Reality tore apart like fabric, and through the tear came something that made every tactical officer on the bridge go silent. It wasn't a ship. It was barely visible at all, a shimmer, a distortion, like looking through water. But the sensors went insane. Energy readings spiked off the charts. Gravitational waves pulsed outward. The very fabric of spacetime was screaming in protest. What is that? Vexithar whispered. The answer came in the form of a broadcast on all standard frequencies. It was Ambassador Rodriguez's voice, calm and measured. Emperor Zar'keth, what you are observing is a Casimir, Hawking destabilizer. The theory behind it is complex, but the practical application is simple. It creates a controlled tear in the quantum vacuum, releasing the zero-point energy that exists in the space between spaces. That energy is then channeled through a series of dimensional cascades, each one amplifying the output exponentially. On the sensors, the shimmer began to pulse. The device you're observing is a small one, Elena's voice continued, approximately the size of a standard cargo container. It's powered by a miniature reactor that we've been developing for the past 160 years. The weapon itself has been in testing for 73 years. We've been very patient, Emperor, very careful, very thorough. The pulsing increased in frequency. You asked what humanity has been preparing while we talked. The answer is simple. We've been preparing to ensure that if diplomacy failed, we would never have to fight a conventional war. Because conventional wars, Emperor, can be lost. But the star began to change. Its light shifted, the spectrum warping as the shimmer pulled at spacetime itself. The asteroid belt started to orbit faster, caught in accelerating gravitational currents. This cannot be lost. This can only end one way. The shimmer collapsed inward, and for a fraction of a second, reality forgot how to exist. The star imploded, its fusion processes disrupted by forces that should not exist in normal spacetime. Then it exploded, but not as a supernova, as something far worse. The zero-point energy tearing through dimensional boundaries converted the star's mass directly into an expanding wave of destruction. that didn't just destroy matter, it erased it, sending it cascading into quantum foam, into the spaces between dimensions where physics itself broke down. "We're 10 light minutes away," someone else shouted. "We have time to that's not moving at light speed," the sensor officer said, her voice hollow. "It's moving through higher dimensions. It's already." The sphere of nothing reached the 3rd Battle Fleet's position. Ships didn't explode. They didn't burn or break apart. They simply stopped existing. One moment, 3,000 vessels of the Zar'keth Dominion floated in space, their shields at maximum, their weapons armed, their crews ready for anything. The next moment, there was nothing but void. Thrl single quotes Kix watched from the World Breaker, which had been positioned at twice the distance of the main fleet. He watched as a third of his observation force ceased to exist. He watched as Ambassador Rodriguez's voice continued, calm and implacable. "The device we demonstrated just now took 17 minutes to deploy and activate. It requires no crew once activated. It cannot be jammed, cannot be detected until it activates, and cannot be stopped once the process begins. We currently have 6,412 of these devices in production. Each one is capable of destroying any system in the galaxy." The sphere of nothing was slowing now, its expansion finally halting as the dimensional cascade collapsed. Where a star system had been, there was now just empty space, cleaner and emptier than anything that should exist naturally. "We don't want to use them, Emperor. We've spent centuries trying to avoid using them, but we will not allow the Dominion to continue consuming the galaxy. We will not allow you to enslave species that trusted us to protect them. We will not." The Dominion has just witnessed humanity's ultimate weapon, a device that can erase entire star systems from existence. But as Elena's final words echo through space, Emperor Zar'keth must make an impossible choice: retreat for the first time in his empire's history, or call humanity's bluff and discover if they're truly willing to weaponize annihilation. On a galactic scale, and in the depths of human space, something even more terrifying is preparing to deploy. The silence on the bridge of the World Breaker was so absolute that Zar'keth could hear the subtle hum of the life support systems. Every officer, every analyst, every warrior who had sworn their life to the Dominion stood frozen, staring at the void where 3,000 of their comrades had existed moments before. "Status report," the Emperor said, his voice cutting through the shock like a blade. Whatever he felt internally, he would not show weakness before his crew. The sensor officer worked her console with trembling appendages. The anomaly has stabilized, my Emperor. The expansion has stopped. Radius of total matter dissolution, approximately 200 million kilometers. Everything within that sphere has been converted. Atoms, energy, everything all reduced to quantum foam. Survivors? Vexither asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "None, Admiral." There was no time to evacuate. The sphere's expansion through higher dimensions meant that from the ship's perspective, the destruction was instantaneous. They had no warning, no chance to "I understand." "Lieutenant," Vexither turned to face the Emperor, and for the first time in his 50 years of service, Zar'keth saw genuine fear in his Admiral's eyes. "My Emperor, we must respond. We cannot allow this attack to go unanswered." "Attack?" The Emperor's mandibles clicked slowly, thoughtfully. "Was it an attack, Admiral? Or was it, as the human stated, a demonstration?" "My Emperor, 3,000 ships were in an uninhabited system at our own choosing, observing a test we were explicitly invited to witness." Zar'keth moved to the viewport, looking out at the empty space where a star had been. "The humans warned us. They told us what would happen. They gave us the coordinates and encouraged us to bring observation equipment. They did not fire on us without warning. They did not ambush our forces. They showed us, exactly as promised, what they are capable of. Then, what do we do?" It was the question that had been hanging in the air since the sphere of nothing had stopped expanding. What did the Dominion do when faced with a weapon against which there was no defense? "We," Zar'keth said slowly, "are going to call their bluff." The War Council assembled within hours, every major military leader of the Dominion gathering either in person or through quantum communication. The chamber was filled with representatives from a dozen species, all of them conquered and integrated into the Dominion's military structure. Zar'keth addressed them from his throne, his presence dominating the space. "We have all witnessed the human weapon," he began without preamble. "You have all seen the recordings. You understand what we face. Now, I will tell you why we will not be intimidated by it." He activated the holographic display, bringing up a strategic map of the galaxy. Human space glowed blue, the Dominion red, with contested areas marked in purple. First, consider the logistics. The humans claim to have 6,000 of these devices in production. Even if we accept this claim at face value, and intelligence suggests it may be exaggerated, deploying 6,000 devices across our 10,000 systems would leave vast portions of our territory untouched. They cannot simultaneously threaten our entire empire. A murmur of agreement rippled through the council. Second, consider the strategic implications. Each device destroys an entire star system. This is not a precision weapon. They cannot use it to target our forces without also destroying whatever they claim to be protecting. If they deploy these weapons in the 17 contested systems, they will kill the very species they purport to defend. More nods. The logic was sound. Third, and most importantly, consider the nature of the weapon itself. It destroys everything in its radius indiscriminately. That includes any human vessels, stations, or colonies in the area. They cannot use this weapon in any system they care about without committing suicide. Zar'keth paused, letting this sink in. This is not a weapon of war. It is a weapon of mutual annihilation. It is a deterrent, nothing more. But my emperor, one of the generals, spoke up. A hulking creature from the Corval species. Deterrents only work if the enemy believes you will use them. Do we believe the humans would actually deploy these devices? That, Zar'keth admitted, is the central question. And the answer is, it does not matter. He expanded the holographic display, showing fleet deployments and strategic positions across the entire Dominion. Even if they are willing to use their weapons, they can only strike a limited number of our systems before we respond. Our fleet can reach Earth in 3 days at maximum warp. The moment they deploy even one of these devices against a Dominion world, we will launch every ship we have at their home system. They may destroy 100 of our worlds, 1,000, even 5,000, but we will take Earth. And when we do, we will ensure that humanity as a species ceases to exist. Mutually assured destruction, Vexither said quietly, precisely. And the humans, for all their patience and planning, are not a warrior species. They do not have the stomach for true war, for the kind of absolute commitment required to follow through on their threat. They hope to frighten us into compliance. They hope that a demonstration of their power will be sufficient to make us abandon our expansion. Zar'keth leaned forward, his compound eyes gleaming, but they have made a critical error. They have shown us their weapon without using it. They have revealed their capability while we still have time to plan, to prepare, to position our forces for retaliation. If they had truly intended to use these devices, they would have struck first and delivered their ultimatum afterward, when we were reeling and unable to respond effectively. So we call their bluff. One of the admirals said. We continue our operations. Not immediately, the emperor said. We will appear to consider their terms. We will enter into negotiations, drag them out, buy time to reposition our fleets. And when the 30-day deadline passes and no weapons are deployed, we will know for certain that they were never willing to use them. Then, and only then, we will demonstrate to the galaxy what happens to those who threaten the Dominion. The council erupted in approval, the assembled warriors and strategists energized by their emperor's analysis. Only Vexither remained quiet, his bioluminescent patterns dim and troubled. 20,7 days later, the human deadline was hours away. The Dominion had used the time well. 3 entire battle fleets had been repositioned to staging areas that could reach human space within days. Recon drones had been deployed throughout the contested systems, monitoring for any sign of the human devices being moved into position. Strategic command posts had been established in hardened facilities deep within secure systems, ensuring continuity of command even if several major worlds were lost. Emperor Zar'keth sat in his private chamber, reviewing the dispositions one final time. Everything was ready. When the deadline passed and the humans failed to act, the Dominion would move swiftly. Human space would be occupied within a month. Their colonies would be integrated, their populations processed, and their little rebellion would become a cautionary tale told to other species, who might consider defiance. A chime announced Vexither's arrival. The admiral entered, his patterns flickering with that same troubled rhythm they had carried for weeks. "My emperor, I must speak freely. You always do, old friend. It is why I value your counsel. I believe we are making a mistake." Vexither activated a small holo projector, bringing up data streams. "My intelligence teams have been analyzing human behavior patterns, their history, their psychology. My emperor, everything in their record suggests that when humans make a threat, they follow through. Their record consists of internal conflicts among their own kind." Zar'keth dismissed. "Fighting among themselves is different from attacking a superior force, is it?" Vexither pulled up historical data. "The humans have engaged in countless wars throughout their history. They have repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to accept catastrophic casualties in pursuit of their objectives. In one of their global conflicts, a single battle lasted for months and resulted in over 1 million casualties on both sides. They did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They fought until one side could no longer continue. Primitive savagery. They have evolved beyond, have they?" The admiral's patterns flared bright red, an aggressive display he had never directed at his emperor before. "My emperor, with respect, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood this species. We saw their patience and diplomacy and assumed it meant they were averse to violence. But what if their patience was not about avoiding violence, but about ensuring that when violence came, it would be absolutely decisive?" Zar'keth was quiet, and Vexither pressed on. "The human ambassador told you a story about the Americans and the Japanese, about a nation that negotiated while secretly building a weapon so terrible its mere existence ended a war. My emperor, that story was not a metaphor. It was a warning based on their own history. They were telling you exactly what they had done, spent centuries negotiating, while building something that would make conventional war impossible. Your point, Admiral. My point is that we may have gravely underestimated their willingness to use their weapon. We assumed they would not destroy inhabited systems, because it would kill those they claim to protect. But what if they have already evacuated those populations? What if the last 200 years of rescue missions were not failures of protection, but successful preparations for exactly this scenario? The Emperor's mandibles went still. He had not considered that. We assumed, Vexither continued, that they would not sacrifice their own systems because they value their colonies. But humans have a concept they call scorched earth. When faced with an enemy they cannot defeat conventionally, they destroy everything rather than let it fall into enemy hands. What if they are prepared to sacrifice every colony, every outpost, everything except Earth itself, to ensure we cannot have them? That would be insane. By our standards, yes. But by human standards? My Emperor, this is a species that literally developed dozens of different philosophical frameworks for dealing with existential threats. They have war colleges dedicated to studying catastrophic scenarios. They have entire academic fields devoted to game theory and strategic decision making under conditions of mutual destruction. The Admiral brought up more data, and there is something else. Something my team discovered while analyzing their communications over the past 2 centuries. The humans have never lied to us, not once. Every claim they made, every prediction they offered, every timeline they provided, all of it has been completely accurate. They told us they were protecting those 17 systems. They were. They told us they would evacuate populations ahead of our conquest. They did. They told us they would file protests. They filed them every single time, exactly as promised. What are you saying? I am saying, my Emperor, that when Ambassador Rodriguez told you they had 6,000 of these devices and would use them, if you did not withdraw, she was not bluffing. She was informing you of exactly what is about to happen. A proximity alarm sounded throughout the palace complex, then another, then dozens more, cascading across the defensive network. Zar'keth rushed to his command console, Vexither right behind him. The display lit up with alerts from across the Dominion. Not invasion fleets, not conventional attacks, spatial anomalies. Hundreds of them, thousands of them. The human devices were appearing everywhere. Report. The Emperor roared into the command channel. My Emperor, The response came from strategic command. The officer's voice barely controlled. "We are detecting mass deployment of the human weapons. Current count, 4,630. 7 confirmed devices. Appearing simultaneously across Dominion space. They're targeting military installations, shipyards, fleet staging areas. Command post civilian worlds." A pause. "No, my Emperor. None of the inhabited worlds are being targeted. They are hitting only our military infrastructure and the 17 contested systems. The contested systems have been evacuated," Vexither said quietly. "They moved everyone out over the past 200 years. We thought they were simply poor at defending their protectorates, but they were preparing those systems to be sacrificed." On the display, the spatial anomalies began to activate. All of them, simultaneously. It was coordinated with terrifying precision. In the directional system, where the Emperor had first met Ambassador Rodriguez, a device activated and consumed the massive shipyard orbiting the 4th planet, a facility that had been building Dominion warships for 300 years. In the Corval home system, another device erased the military academy on the 2nd moon. In the Zar'keth home system itself, a device appeared at the edge of the system and began consuming the outer defensive platforms. But it was in the 17 contested systems that the true purpose became clear. Each one had a device appear at the heart of the system. Each one activated within seconds of the others. And each one, as it expanded, carefully, precisely calibrated to consume the entire system and nothing beyond it, ensured that those worlds would never be fought over again. They were not weapons aimed at the Dominion. They were barriers, burning away contested territory so that no empire could claim it. "They're castling," Vexither breathed in amazement. "They're sacrificing all the disputed territory to secure their core position." 4,000 devices, Zar'keth said, watching his military infrastructure dissolve across a dozen sectors. They said they had over 6,000. "Where are the rest?" The answer came in the form of another broadcast from Ambassador Rodriguez. Her image appeared on every Dominion channel, on every frequency, impossible to block or jam. "Emperor Zar'keth, by now you have observed the deployment of our devices. You will note that we have struck only military targets and contested territory. Not one inhabited Dominion world has been touched. Not one civilian population center has been targeted. This was deliberate." On the screen behind her, a star map showed human space surrounded by a buffer zone of destroyed systems of firebreak, separating humanity from the Dominion. "We meant what we said. We do not want war. We do not want to destroy your empire or harm your people. We want only to exist in peace, to protect those who ask for our protection, and to ensure that the Dominion's expansion ends at our borders." The map shifted, showing the remaining Dominion military infrastructure. "We have deployed 4,700 devices. We have 2,312 remaining. These devices are now positioned throughout our space. Key to activate if we detect any hostile action from the Dominion. Not at the borders, Emperor. In our own systems. If you attack us, we will not meet you in battle. We will simply deny you the victory." The image of Rodriguez leaned forward, and her expression was the saddest thing Zar'keth had ever seen. "We have turned our own territory into a dead man's switch. If you destroy Earth, the devices activate automatically. Every human colony, every station, every world we have settled, all of it will be erased rather than fall into your hands. You will gain nothing. You will conquer empty space and call it victory while standing on a mountain of ashes." She paused, letting that sink in. "But it does not have to be this way. Our 30-day deadline has expired. You did not withdraw from the contested systems, so we have eliminated the contested systems. That matter is settled. Now, we propose a new arrangement." The map changed again, showing a clearly delineated border between human and Dominion space. "Because we will have had 200 years to perfect our weapons, 200 years to plan our strategies, 200 years to steel our resolve. And when we finally act, it will not be with hesitation or doubt. That is the lesson Earth wants the galaxy to remember. Humanity will talk for as long as talking is productive. We will negotiate, compromise, and seek peaceful solutions to any problem. We will show patience that spans centuries if necessary." Her eyes swept across the assembled species, and her voice dropped to something cold and final. But if you take that patience for weakness, if you mistake our preference for peace as an inability to make war, if you push us past the point where talking can solve the problem," she paused, "then you will discover that the species that spent centuries preparing for a war they didn't want is far more dangerous than the species that wanted war from the beginning. This is the border we propose. We will never cross it. We will never expand beyond it. We will make no further territorial claims and will enter into no new protection agreements with species in Dominion space. In exchange, you will agree to the same. The border remains fixed. Neither side expands toward the other, and the 2,000 devices we have remaining will be maintained as a permanent deterrent to ensure that this agreement is honored. This is not a surrender, Emperor. This is not a victory. This is simply the end of a very long negotiation. You may continue your expansion in any direction except toward human space. You may continue to conquer, to integrate, to build your empire. We will not interfere, but we will not be conquered, and we will not allow those under our existing protection to be harmed." Rodriguez stood, and she looked directly into the camera as if she could see through it to where Thralkix watched. "You once told me that rights are a fiction, that only power matters. You were wrong, Emperor. Rights are not granted by power. They are defended by it. We have spent 117 years building the power to defend what we believe in. We used that time to perfect not just our weapon, but our resolve. We are ready to sacrifice everything rather than surrender. The question now is, are you willing to sacrifice everything just to deny us our freedom?" The broadcast ended. Thralkix stood in silence, staring at the tactical display. His empire, still vast, still powerful, but now circumscribed, limited. For the first time in the Dominion's history, they had encountered a boundary they could not cross. "My Emperor," Vexithur said carefully, "we could still attack. We could overwhelm their remaining defenses, take Earth before they can respond, and gain what? Admiral? A single planet that they would destroy rather than surrender? At the cost of how many of our worlds?" The Emperor shook his head slowly. "No, the humans have outplayed us. They used our arrogance against us. Let us believe they were weak while they built something that made our strength irrelevant." He turned away from the display, suddenly feeling every one of his 3 centuries. They won not by defeating us, but by making the cost of defeating them unacceptably high. And they did it while maintaining the moral position, striking only military targets, offering peace at every turn. If we attack now, we are not defending the Dominion, we are committing genocide out of spite. So we accept their terms. We accept reality, Admiral. We cannot conquer humanity without destroying ourselves in the process. And there are still 10,000 other worlds, hundreds of other species, entire sectors of the galaxy that remain unconquered. Thralkix managed a bitter mandible. Click. That might have been laughter. The humans have taught us an important lesson today. What lesson, my Emperor? That the most dangerous opponent is not the one with the most weapons, but the one with nothing left to lose and the will to ensure you lose with them. 3 months later, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood in the same council chamber, where she had first issued humanity's ultimatum. This time, Emperor Thralkix came to her. He entered without his honor guard, without weapons, with only Admiral Vexithur at his side. The border treaty was signed that day. The Galactic Council, revitalized by humanity's demonstration that the Dominion could be checked, formally recognized both human space and Dominion space as sovereign territories. Trade agreements were established. Communication protocols were set. The 2 powers would not be friends, but they would not be enemies. As the ceremony concluded, Thralkix approached Elena privately. "Tell me something, Ambassador. Would you really have done it? Would you have destroyed your own worlds rather than let them be conquered?" Elena looked at him with those dark, ancient eyes. "Emperor, my species spent 100 years preparing for a moment we hoped would never come. We evacuated 63 species, trillions of individuals, from their homes because we knew we might have to sacrifice those homes. We built weapons that could destroy everything we had worked to create. We prepared every single citizen of every single colony for the possibility that they might have to die to preserve our independence." She paused, then continued softly. "You asked if we would really do it. The answer is, we already did. The moment we built those devices, we committed ourselves. The moment we deployed them, we crossed a line we could never uncross. Every human living in our space knows that there are devices in their system that could erase them from existence if it means protecting our sovereignty. And they accepted that. They volunteered for it. Because some things, Emperor, are worth dying for. And if I had called your bluff, if I had attacked anyway, Elena smiled, and it was not a happy expression. Then you would have learned what 2 centuries of diplomatic patience looks like. When it finally runs out, you would have learned that humans are very, very good at 2 things: building weapons and deciding when to use them. Zar'keth left that meeting with something he had not felt in centuries: respect for an opponent. The humans had been everything they claimed to be: patient, diplomatic, preferring peace to war. But when pushed to the absolute limit, they had shown a capacity for ruthless strategic thinking that rivaled the Dominion's finest military minds. Years later, at a gathering of the Galactic Council, a young species asked Elena Rodriguez how humanity had survived their encounter with the Dominion. 2 things, she replied. First, we understood that diplomacy is not weakness, it is the application of patience in pursuit of long-term goals. Second, we understood that sometimes the best way to avoid a war is to build a weapon so terrible that using it would be unthinkable, and then make it absolutely clear that you will use it anyway. That seems contradictory, the young species said. It is, Elena agreed. Welcome to dealing with humans. We are a species defined by contradictions. We value peace but prepare for war. We choose diplomacy but build doomsday weapons. We talk for 200 years and then end a conflict in seconds. We are patient right up until the moment we are not. She looked out at the assembled species, representatives from thousands of worlds, each one now living in a galaxy where even the mighty Dominion had learned it could be checked. The Dominion thought they knew what humanity was. They saw our patience and assumed we were passive. They saw our diplomacy and assumed we were weak. They saw our restraint and assumed we lacked the capacity for decisive action. Her smile was small and sad and proud all at once. They were wrong. We were patient because we had a plan. We were diplomatic because we hoped it would work. We showed restraint because we genuinely prefer peace. But when all those options were exhausted, she shrugged. Then we showed them what 2 centuries of preparation looks like when it all gets deployed at once. And the Dominion never saw it coming. Someone murmured. Oh, they saw it, Elena corrected. We told them exactly what we were going to do. We gave them coordinates to a demonstration. We provided a deadline. We explained our capabilities in detail. They saw everything. She stood, gathering her things as the session ended. They just didn't believe it until it was too late, because they made the classic mistake of judging an opponent by their assumptions, rather than their actions. They assumed we would behave as they would behave. They could not imagine that a species could be simultaneously peaceful and ruthlessly pragmatic, simultaneously patient and decisively violent when necessary. The ambassador headed toward the exit, then paused and looked back. She smiled one last time, and it was the smile of someone who had made terrible decisions and made peace with them. It will be with the absolute certainty of someone who tried everything else. First, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez walked out of the Galactic Council chambers, leaving behind a room full of species who would remember this day, remember this lesson, and remember that humanity had rewritten the rules of galactic politics not through conquest, but through the patient, methodical preparation for a war they prayed they would never have to fight. And in the end, the Galactic Empire never saw it coming, not because humanity hid their capabilities, but because the Empire could not imagine that anyone would actually be willing to use them. That was their mistake, and it was their last one. The greatest victory is not won on the battlefield, but in the moment when your enemy realizes that fighting you will cost them everything they hope to gain. Humanity didn't defeat the Galactic Empire through superior firepower. They defeated them through superior patience, superior planning, and the absolute willingness to follow through on their promises, no matter how terrible the cost. Sometimes the longest conversation ends with the shortest war, and sometimes the strongest weapon is not the one you use, but the one you build well enough that you never have to.